Chapter 9 Holiday Outings and Swimming. When there was a school holiday during the week, few stayed home. The teacher always planned an outing party. The day before the holiday, the bigger boys got together with the help of the teacher and mapped out the important places of interest to see. We had to carry our lunch and met at the school at 8 o'clock in the morning. The older girls carried their ukuleles. We left about 9 o'clock, walking toward the beach, and scaled the cliff by following a step-like trail up to the top, about 50 feet above the ground. It was a nice plateau about 50 yards wide and a mile long. We walked in pairs with the teacher heading the party, and I was made the spokesman. We stopped at Hakuma Cave, Puhi'okalekini, and Hala'ani'ani. In each of these places I spoke about their legends. I can just remember my speaking pidgin English, and time again, my teacher would correct my sentences. From Hala'ani'ani in the distance loomed Kapa'ahu. The distance we covered was about a mile and a half. In another half-mile walk, there was the old Catholic church built near the beach at Kapa'ahu. All the sides were built with lava rock. There was no roof, and it was covered with guava bushes. During the building of the church, the natives selected large lava rock and set the siding up. The mortar to seal the rock was a substance the natives collected from the ocean, called coral rock. They built a fire pit, or imu, and when it was fully heated, they placed in the coral rock. The rock then became soft and pliable and ready to be used as mortar. The old church still stands today as a monument of Hawaiian construction. From there, the heiau, Wahaula, Redmouth, could be seen about half a mile away. Just a few hundred feet away from the church, there were a few turtles that had turned to lava rock. The legend of this was told in a different manner. The real story, as I recollect it, was that Pele, the fire goddess, happened to come along on her regular trip, and as the turtles ran back to the ocean, they were caught and turned into lava. There was a pond below the church that was a familiar place where the family stopped after coming home from the beach. They cleaned themselves there first before going home. During the night when the moon was full, a mermaid was seen taking a swim and combing her hair. The natives feared to go near the pond because they were afraid the mermaid would take them and disappear. Next, we all stopped at the pond called Punalu'u, or Queen Bath. This pond was an oblong type, 10 to 15 feet wide and about 40 feet long. The side facing the ocean was 5 feet higher than the water level. The opposite side was like a valley, and you could walk 20 feet to the edge of the pond. There were several mango trees and guava bushes around. We all sat at the lower end and rested, then had our lunch and later went in for a swim. Some forgot to bring an extra pair of pants or dress. This didn't bother them as they just jumped in with their clothes on. In the bygone days, this pond was used by the queen, and it was taboo. We stayed at the pond about an hour and prepared to return home by the main road to Kalapana. We stopped along the road to pick mangoes and sweet guava. Some stopped at a kukui nut tree to pick up the nuts that had fallen to the ground. They picked the selected nuts to make necktie holders or rings. Some picked off the milky white substance called pilali that oozed out from the bark that had dried and hardened. They sucked it like candy. I tried it, but I did not like the taste. We reached the school about 3 o'clock, and some of the children played their ukuleles and the rest sang. Then we all bid goodbye and left for home. On Sunday after church, we all walked to Waiakolea Pond. The road crossed the pond in the center. On the left side, going toward Kaimu, the black sand beach, was the Kalapana Park, and on the right was the sandhill and the beach. The beach was sandy and small, just enough to go in for body surfing. Both sides were rocky and covered with sea moss. Far out from the entrance where the breakers started, the ocean floor was covered with lava rock, and it was deep. Once in a while, a shark, mano, appeared during high tide. Sometimes it would swim near the beach where it was deep. We always noticed that when the water was warm, the shark was near. We came out of the water and watched where the breakers began. Then we could see the fins of the shark above the water as it swam toward the beach. It was claimed that these sharks were kept and fed by the natives who believed that they were their aumakua, or guardian angel. These sharks were tame. When the natives went out to fish in their canoes, the sharks would be around to protect and help them get back safely. The keeper had died, and now there was no one to feed them. This is a legend, lost and forgotten. On the park side, which was built by the county of Hawaii, the stone tables and seats were made from flat lava rock of the stone walk taken to Kalapana, and was originally from the heiau at Kapoho. This heiau was situated in the cane field, but it was just a pile of rock to the workers, and they wanted something different and useful to protect them from rain and wind. So they hauled this rock onto a truck and unloaded it at Kalapana. The park keeper, a Hawaiian named Waiau, when he saw the rocks, knew that they came from the heiau at Kapoho. I heard him saying that they would all be punished for taking these rocks. After the tables and places to sit were finished, it was really nice. They were placed under the pandanus tree. It was a nice setting with the pond on one side and the hau tree growing near the water that provided shade, the people and cars crossing the road back and forth. While you rested and had lunch, you could watch what was going on. If you got sleepy, you just stretched out on the rock bench and fell asleep. While we were all at Waiakolea, the tide was high, and we just took off our clothes and jumped in the water nude and thought nothing of it. The younger set swam nude, but the older children had a cloth on. Sometimes tourists passing through would stop to take our picture. Once I was swimming while some of the children were on the road nude. The tourists took their camera and asked them to stand and face them. Some did, but others jumped into the pond. After taking the pictures, they were given some money. The tourists then left, and we all laughed at the ones who got paid. Later, we all left for the beach. The tide was low, and as we were body surfing, one of the boys called the shark in as the water was warm. We ran to the sandhill and watched to see if it was a shark. Before too long, we saw the shark fin, but it was far out in the deep where the breakers began. The shark could not come in because the water was too shallow on account of the low tide. For a while, we thought that the shark could not get out of the breakers, but with a great struggle, it freed itself into the deep. We all walked to the pond and took another dive, washed, and returned home at about 5 o'clock. One day, I was going to meet some of the boys at the heiau Kekoa to pick black figs and marble seeds that grew in a pod called kakala'iau. When dry, the pod opened and a ready-made marble fell out. We just picked the round ones that were the same size as an ordinary marble. These were the kind of marbles we had to play with. When I reached the heiau, no one showed up, so I walked to Kaniu Moi to see if I could pick some coconuts with tender meat, but they were too young. I then walked toward the cliff near a pandanus grove. There was a vine of those marble pods. Sometimes you could pick them from the ground. I climbed over the stone wall about 2 feet high and saw the grove of pods. As I was looking for marbles in the pods, I heard someone walking away from me, coming out from the side of the cliff. He could not see me because I sat among the pandanus grove. I could see him going over the hump and down to the coconut grove. He was holding in his right hand about 4 or 5 mullet, which were about 1.5 feet long, strung through the gills with the vine found growing around the cliff. Where he came out, there was no place that opened to the beach, just a high cliff. But below, there were lots of cracks or openings where you could see water. I knew the person, and he was not far from his home. As he disappeared over the other side of the stone wall, I retraced his steps to the cliff. I searched the place and could not move any rocks because they were too large to move. Where there was an opening or crack, I looked down and could see water, but not fish. So then I thought that where he got the fish, the place would be wet. But there was no such sign. Maybe there was a cave somewhere, but I searched to no avail. Since nobody came to meet me, I went over to pick the figs and walked home. When I got there, I told my mother what I saw. She looked at me and laughed. She said that maybe I was standing on the very rock where he got the mullet, and yet I could not find a trace. I told her that this could not be, as I had walked up and down and checked the side of the cliff to no avail. Then she told me that this mullet hole was kept by the family for use when the chief arrived. Usually, the runner for the chief announced his arrival. This was the time that the guardian of the mullet would go to this place and bring out the fish without anybody knowing or following him. They all knew he kept this hole, but no one dared to take it from him. The Hawaiians knew if he wanted to steal, he could do so. This was one time you had to remember the rituals when taking the fish. You had to offer to the stone fish god with 1 fish, and you took the rest. Whoever kept the mullet holes had the fish rock called ku'ula, and only he was allowed to take the fish. The rest of the people knew that the penalty for stealing meant death. It was cheaper to get the mullet from the sea than from the mullet hole. During the mullet season, this mullet hole was filled with mullet. They only picked the big size that were used for the chief. It was kept by a commoner whose work was to serve the royal family. My mother warned me not to search for this mullet hole, as if I did, then the ku'ula rock would want me to take care of it. I would be given the key to the ritual. Either someone would come to me, or in my dreams I would be advised what to do. If the ritual was broken for greed of money, then you paid with your life. This is what every Hawaiian believed. My mother gave me the true meaning, and I believed her, which she interpreted as, if you don't see this hole, then don't try to find it.